All right, let's talk about that infamous 6:30 p.m. post-work slum. We all know it, right? It's a total trap for our willpower. Today's explainer dives into a fascinating 30-day personal test called the Makhana Experiment, and it completely tackles this exact daily struggle by challenging our automatic evening routines. So let's get into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. The source material starts with this incredibly universal trap. You hit 6:30 p.m., you're totally depleted from work, and boom, you're operating on pure autopilot, marching straight to the pantry for a bag of chips. It's that exact moment when your mental energy is literally drained for the day, and conscious decision-making, yeah, that just goes right out the window. But here's the absolute crucial realization the author makes. This wasn't about a physical need for calories. There were no actual hunger pangs. It had simply become a deeply ingrained habit loop. It was just a behavioral link between the end of the workday and the physical act of eating.
So this sparked a really simple but powerful question. What if we disrupted just one single habit for 30 days? The author decided to swap those evening chips for roasted makhana. And what's cool is, this wasn't some punishing diet. It was done purely out of curiosity, just to see exactly what happens when you break an automatic loop.
Let's move to the timeline and see how this builds over 4 weeks. We've got breaking the habit in week 1, a natural shift in week 2, finding a new mindset in week 3, and finally, a bigger perspective in week 4. Let's break down each phase.
Week 1 was all about breaking the habit. And honestly, the first few days were surprisingly tough. There was some real tension here. You see, the craving wasn't actually for the chips themselves, but for the familiar action of eating. The physical motion, the crunching, the mindless distraction. The brain was essentially throwing a minor tantrum because its super comfortable, well-worn neural pathway was suddenly blocked.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the brilliance of substituting makhana wasn't just about nutrition. It was all about the texture. The crunchiness totally satisfied that behavioral need to mindlessly crunch while decompressing, but it completely bypassed the heavy, oily aftermath of potato chips. It was this perfect one-to-one behavioral swap, but with vastly different physical results.
As we move into week 2, the struggle really starts to fade. Reaching for the makhana actually started to feel natural. It no longer felt like this forced, strenuous exercise in willpower. The habit itself had been successfully rewired. Which is a great reminder that getting over the initial friction of those first few days is usually the hardest part of the whole battle.
But here's the wild part. It wasn't just the food that changed. The behaviors surrounding the food shifted too. The whole evening routine evolved from mindlessly eating while zombie scrolling through a phone to actually enjoying the snack consciously. By disrupting the autopilot mode of eating chips, they inadvertently disrupted the autopilot mode of the entire evening. How cool is that?
By week 3, a deep psychological shift occurred. The experiment transcended just being about a single snack, and it fundamentally altered the author's entire mental framework for evaluating food choices.
And this brilliantly illustrates that shift. Instead of asking the instant gratification question, what tastes good, the author began asking, what adds value to my day? This is a massive shift. It changes snacking from a mindless indulgence into an intentional, conscious choice about how to fuel your body.
So, when asking what adds value, well, makhana checks all the boxes. It's naturally light, super crunchy and satisfying, a great source of plant-based protein, contains dietary fiber, and it's incredibly easy to fit into a balanced lifestyle. The key takeaway here: making a healthier choice absolutely does not mean you have to sacrifice taste or satisfaction.
Finally, we hit week 4, and looking back after 30 days, the most significant, long-lasting transformation had very little to do with the actual food itself and everything to do with how decisions were being made. The experiment completely rewired their fundamental approach to daily choices.
The source text makes a really powerful observation here. Small daily habits, like just swapping one single evening snack, compound over time to have a vastly greater impact than those dramatic one-week lifestyle overhauls that almost always end in burnout. Remember, consistency beats intensity every single time.
Now, let's be real. Replacing one snack isn't going to magically transform your entire life overnight, but it acts as a crucial catalyst. It proves to your brain that change is possible, and it becomes the very first step toward making much more mindful choices across the board.
So the crucial point is this. We've got to stop searching for complicated solutions. Seriously.
We spend so much time and energy looking for complex health hacks or intricate, stressful diet plans to fix our routines. We constantly overcomplicate our approach to health and well-being, when in reality, the answer is usually beautifully simple.
You literally only ever need to start with the number one. Just one habit, one meal, one snack. Just one better decision every single day. That is quite literally all it takes to interrupt a negative cycle and start building a positive one.
I really want this core lesson to sink in for you. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be consistent. If you mess up a day, well, that's completely fine. It's simply about showing up and consistently trying to make that one slightly better choice, just like swapping those chips from Makhana at 6:30 p.m.
That brings us to the end of today's explainer, but before we wrap up, I want to leave you with the exact question the author posed at the end of their experiment. What small habit has made the biggest difference in your life? I'd love to hear about it, so share your own experiments and habit swaps down in the comments. Keep exploring and keep learning.